There's no way you guys were actually right and this video actually ended up being over an hour long. Good grief. Hello friends, it is me, Wormwood. I have developed a new skill tree for you to play with, except it do be looking more like a skill bush than a tree. Anyway, this skill bush allows me to grow more things from my plant body, including living creatures and poop-inducing soup. And I can finally unleash my full damage potential against the bosses of the world. But first, we must talk about my base perks and quirks, including diving really deep into the rabbit hole, which is blooming mechanics. And then we will talk about my skill bush. Also, Jakey referred to me as they in his big character review video, but this is incorrect, as I do in fact have balls. As in my character portrait, I refer to myself as he. So yes, I am a boy and therefore probably have testy balls. Damn, we're less than a minute into the video and we're already talking about Wormwood's balls. So let's drop that just as hard as my balls did and instead talk about Wormwood's base perks and quirks before talking about his skill tree. Wormwood starts with a healthy 150 health and hunger, along with 200 sanity. Wormwood is a plant, so he has a bunch of plant-related perks and quirks and an insanely high utility crafting tab. But before we talk about that, we must first talk about Wormwood's biggest quirk or downside, as it puts the rest of his abilities and playstyle into perspective. This quirk is, food does not affect his health. Like at all. So eating some pierogies or any other food which normally heals your health will not heal Wormwood, though he will still gain the normal amount of hunger and sanity from said food. This also applies to negative health foods such as red mushrooms and other food items which normally decrease your health. But Jakey, how am I meant to heal? Well, the primary way you'll be healing as Wormwood will be using farming nutrients, such as manure and compost nutrients. Anything that would apply manure nutrients to a farm plot can be applied to Wormwood and will instantly heal Wormwood. For example, some guano will instantly heal Wormwood for 3 health, while manure only heals for 2 health. Or you can apply compost nutrients, which heals Wormwood over time. For example, the compost item, which can be easily acquired through putting items like twigs and rot into a composting bin, will heal Wormwood for 8 health over 8 seconds. This nutrient healing is generally very slow, the best item being the Compost Wrap, which heals for 8 health initially and then 32 health over 32 seconds, but we'll talk more about that later. So let's talk about the other way to heal, health regeneration effects. Effects from items and weapons and structures, such as, but not limited to, the Bat, tents, healing salves, and jelly beans. All of these items' healing effects work on Wormwood. Other effects which affect Wormwood is with the help of Wally, who can cook you up some Grim Galette, which has an effect once eaten, which is, it swaps your health and sanity values based on percentage. So having 10% health and 100% sanity, then eating the Grim Galette will fully heal Wormwood, but pulling his sanity down to 10% of his max. But that's okay, because Wormwood gains 10 sanity when planting plants and seeds of all kinds, while only losing 5 sanity when digging plants up, picking flowers, or basically anything which kills or hurts a friendly plant. And when cutting down a tree, Wormwood loses 15 flat sanity no matter what the size of the tree is. This effect extends to when someone else harms a plant in a roughly 4.5 tile radius around Wormwood with a stronger sanity drain towards the center. So best not to have Wormwood witness the Bearager tree harvest, as it seemingly induces a short-lived 5-second sanity drain, which drains more sanity the more trees that were knocked down in the area around Wormwood. It doesn't take a genius to see the lack of balance in those sanity values when digging and planting plants, so grab your favorite or least favorite plant buddy and continuously give it a taste of life before ripping it back up repeatedly until your sanity needs are satisfied, netting you a positive 5 sanity each time you replant it. Speaking of replanting, Wormwood can plant seeds anywhere where you can plant other plants, so no gardening tools required, nor do you require farming turf to plant and grow seeds as Wormwood. Though an important note is that turf that isn't farming turf does not store nutrients for your planted seeds, and as such, the seeds will never reach their nutrient requirements, leading you to never get giants and sometimes not even getting a seed back. But otherwise very useful for planting a horde of wild seeds to get one of a vegetable without using up farming real turf state. Oh my gosh, I said that in the wrong order. Without using up farming turf real estate, there you go. Also, any seed that Wormwood plants, once fully grown, will stay fresh in the ground longer than if planted by a non-Wormwood player. So you can leave your farm crops in the ground 1.5 times longer, which equates to 6 days rather than the normal 4 days before they will rot. But if they do rot, it's not the end of the rod, as by default, after 4 to 5 days, the rotten crop will restart its growth cycle back to stage 1, and will eventually become fully grown again. But if a crop is grown after it was previously a rotten crop, it cannot grow into a giant. But it still can give up to 2 seeds back, if you tend to it well enough. Just keep in mind that every rotten crop speeds up the spawn of the Lord of the Fruit Flies boss by half a day. Wormwood does not suffer sanity drain from being wet, nor from equipping wet items, but will still suffer the temperature loss from being wet and can still have wet items slip from his hands. The wet sanity drain being nullified is a small perk, but it can be substantial in certain circumstances. For example, typically if you're holding, for example, a wet weapon and wearing a wet helmet, you'll lose 5.55 sanity per minute per wet item, plus the 3.33 sanity drain per minute for having 100 wetness. Wormwood would nullify all of this sanity drain. Eye plants spawned from Lureplant are neutral towards Wormwood, so you can use them in combat versus bosses or use them as base defense against hounds. We'll talk more about Lureplant utilization later due to one of Wormwood's skills on his skill tree, so moving on. While harvesting seaweeds, Wormwood won't cause them to wake up and attack when shaving them, which they normally would if a non-Wormwood character harvested them during daytime. During nighttime though, they don't wake up regardless of the character harvesting them, but approach cautiously. Bumping them with your bow will also wake them up and cause them to either hit you with their projectiles or poke holes in your bow. Either way, a bad time. Now, Wormwood's very powerful character crafting tab. By default, it allows him to craft 4 different items, firstly being the living log. That's right, the log which is usually very rare and limited until you kill the tree guard mini bosses for them. For a small cost of 20 health, Wormwood will grow and chop a living log off his arm. This is an insanely powerful ability, as living logs usually take a while to get in the early days by hunting down totally normal trees, tree guards, or finding mush gnomes in the Lunar Grotto biome in the caves. They're even more hard to get in large quantities in the early game, but Wormwood allows you to make masses of living logs on day 1. But as we know, Wormwood struggles with healing, but as some of you are probably screaming internally by now, or externally, depending how crazy you are. Wortox! Pair Wormwood with a Wortox who has easy access to effect healing, being his souls, which heals players around him when he drops them, including Wormwood. Pairing a Wormwood and a Wortox is one of the most powerful utility combinations you can get in the entire game, as you can now craft infinite living logs due to Wortox's healing, which enables every living log recipe in the early game, like powerful weapons like dark swords and tools like clubs, along with all the ruined staffs like Starcaller staffs. This combination also enables mass production of Wormwood's next few items in his crafting tab. The Bramble Husk. This can be crafted by Wormwood using 2 living logs and 4 bee stingers. It's a body armor piece which provides 80% physical damage reduction with a durability of 525 health, making it good for day-to-day armor. But the best part about this armor is when you get hit, the Bramble Husk punches back with a burst of thorns dealing 22.667 area of effect damage around Wormwood. This area of effect is a small half tower radius. And also this damage effect does have a very small cooldown of 0.3 seconds or 18 frames at 60 FPS. Thanks Arkwell for fact checking this for me. The Bramble Husk is one of the better armor pieces due to its utility, and because it can be mass produced sustainably by having a Wormwood and a Wortox killing bees in any bee biome. It also has some specific uses which make it insanely good, such as against Bee Queen. The Bramble Husk will not only deal damage back to Bee Queen, but will also allow you to basically ignore the normal bee minions throughout the entire fight, as the Bramble Husk will continuously stagger and kill them. As I mentioned, this is also insane for dealing with hordes of smaller mobs like spiders and small monkeys, as one small hit from one of these mobs will deal damage back to all of them within the AoE, causing hordes of mobs to fall before you and your armor. Probably, because for reference, a full health Wormwood and 1 Bramble Husk can survive about 50 or so spiders and about 25 shadow spelunkies. And that's because shadow spelunkies can't be staggered out of their attack animation, whereas spiders can, hence why the husk is more effective against spiders. One last thing about the Bramble Husk is you can pick plants which normally damage you, like cactus and spiky bushes, but without them damaging you as long as you're wearing the Bramble Husk. Next in the crafting tab is the Bramble Trap, which is comparable to the Tooth Trap, which is an item which any player can craft, but the Bramble Trap has a few differences. The Bramble Trap costs 1 living log and 1 bee stinger to craft, and it has 10 uses. Once placed, the trap will trigger if a hostile ground mob enters the trap's range and deals 40 damage in the small area effect around the trap. The area effect of the trap is a half tower radius. After it has been triggered, it must be reset by a player. The trap can only be triggered by ground mobs, like I said, but once sprung, the area of effect of the trap can hit flying mobs too. As we said, any player has access to Tooth Traps which do more damage than Bramble Traps, being 60, but it's single target damage, whereas the Bramble Traps are area of effect. The Bramble Traps can be better for protection from hound attacks as long as each trigger hits at least 2 hounds 50% of the time, but if you're decent at fighting hounds or you're in a team, then you probably won't be using these. Lastly, in the crafting tab is the Compost Wrap, which Wormwood can craft using 5 manure, 2 rot, and 1 nitrate. Niter? I don't know. Wormwood can apply the Compost Wrap to himself, consuming it to instantly heal for 8 health and then 32 health over 32 seconds, for a total of 40 healing. Using multiple Compost Wraps will not cause the effects to stack, only to refresh after applying the 8 initial heal. It can also be used on a farming plot to provide 24 points of growth formula, 32 points of compost, and 24 points of manure. If you mass produce this Compost Wrap, it's one of the better high healing methods Wormwood has access to in the early game, and it can be mass produced with skills which we'll talk about later on. Wormwood takes more damage from fire than every other character, more specifically 25% more damage from being on fire and will stay on fire for 1 extra second. This also includes taking more damage from proximity to fire. Multiplier. And now you may think we've come to the end of Wormwood's base perks and quirks, but now we must talk about something slightly complicated. No, not planar damage yet, but bloom mechanics. Wormwood has the unique ability to enter a bloomed state which has 3 different stages. During each stage, Wormwood gains a ramping speed and hunger modifier. Stage 1 gains 6% movement speed and hunger modifier, stage 2 is 13%, and stage 3 is 20%. Also, while fully bloomed, Wormwood gains a few extra perks, being Wormwood will spawn a trail of cosmetic flowers behind him as he moves. This trail of flowers attracts bees, all kinds of bees. Also, while running within a 1-tile radius of a planted crop, the crop will be automatically tended to. Due to Wormwood's big flower on his head, he gains innate 60 summer insulation, slowing down overheating at 70 degrees starting at 25 degrees, from 45 seconds with no summer insulation to 135 seconds with level 3 bloom. Now that didn't sound complicated, so what's the complicated part? Well, my innocent child, get ready to understand bloom mechanics as much as I, which is to say, barely. Just kidding, this section took me ages to write and test. Wormwood starts in stage 0, where he has no what we and the wiki will call bloomness in Wormwood's bloomness pool. Upon applying any kind of growth formula to Wormwood or the season's spring starts, Wormwood enters stage 1 of bloom, gaining the before mentioned 6% movement and hunger modifier. While in stage 1 of bloom, he'll gain bloomness at a default rate of 1 per second. Upon reaching 480 bloomness, Wormwood will enter stage 2 of bloom, where his bloomness is reset to 0, and you must accumulate 480 bloomness again to enter stage 3. Wow, that took me like 8 takes to get that correct. This bloomness gain rate by default is 1 per second, but it can be influenced and changed by the world and you, the player. Here's the bloomness gain rate formula. Firstly, the season multiplier, which during autumn and summer is set to 1 times, winter is 0.75, and spring is 1.5. So in winter, your bloomness will go up slower compared to autumn and summer, and spring you accumulate bloomness faster than the rest of the seasons. Next is the fertilizer storage, which influences the bloomness gain rate. Simply apply growth formula to Wormwood, and you will increase the fertilizer storage by a flat value depending on the amount of growth formula nutrients the growth formula gave you. It's also worth noting that the growth formula used transition from stage 0 to stage 1 has its growth formula nutrient applied in the bloom gain rate calculation for stage 1, so it isn't wasted. After you reach stage 2 bloom, your fertilizer storage value is reset, and if you want to increase your bloom gain rate above the default 1, you must reapply growth formula again. Though if you don't, like I said, you still get the default 1 bloomness per second gain regardless. To make it easier to see what's going on with this formula, it's time for, you guessed it, Excel gaming for the first time in this video. So here's a chart showing bloomness gain rate in all seasons with different amounts of growth formula nutrient applied. So in autumn with no growth formula, you gain the default 1 per second, whereas in spring with 10 applications of super growth formula, you will gain 5.25 bloomness per second, reducing the time to get to stage 2 bloomness from 480 seconds, which is 1 in-game day, to 91.4 seconds, which is only 19% duration of 1 day. Blooming mechanics weren't even that bad to explain. Oh wait, the script says we're not done yet. So you've applied growth formula to enter stage 1 of blooming, and then waited and maybe even applied more growth formula in stage 1 and 2 to speed up your bloomness gain, and you have finally reached stage 3. Upon reaching stage 3, you will achieve the max modifiers for hunger and speed being 20%, while your head gains a bloomed flower and you unleash your before mentioned flower trail. But behind the scenes, your bloomness has been set to 1440, and growth formula no longer increases your bloomness gain. In fact, you don't gain any more bloomness, as your bloomness rate is set to -1, so now you're losing bloomness at a rate of 1 per second, unless it's spring, in which case your bloomness gain rate is set to 0, so you lose none, and during winter, this rate is set to -2, so you'll lose bloomness twice as fast. So with 1440 bloomness and a default bloom gain rate of -1, you will stay in stage 3 of bloom for 3 in-game days during autumn and summer, 1.5 in-game days during winter, and you'll stay in bloom throughout the whole of spring, and then it starts counting back down once summer begins. Despite our bloomness pool being set to 1440, we can still increase it further by applying growth formula. Applying growth formula nutrients causes this formula to be applied to the growth formula value to add a flat amount of bloomness to our bloomness pool. Our bloomness pool can hold up to 2400 bloomness, so applying 4 uses of super growth formula upon entering stage 3 bloom will max out our default bloomness pool from 1440 to 2400 bloomness, which will last us 5 in-game days before it depletes. Once you max your bloomness pool out, you can fill it back up throughout your bloom duration. For example, maxing it out at 2400 bloomness gives 5 days of bloomness, but then 4 days into your stage 3 bloom, you apply 8 more uses of super growth formula to extend your bloom to last another 4 days. Because each super growth formula gives 240 bloomness to your pool, which is equivalent to half a day, so applying 8 uses of it will extend your bloom for 4 days, more than the original bloom duration. And you can repeat this every 4 days to stay in full bloom forever. Just remember your bloom pool can only hold a maximum of 2400 bloomness. Also, when Wormwood is exposed to acid rain in the caves, it increases his bloomness gain rate and amount of flat bloomness, but who cares? After your stage 3 bloomness pool depletes, you will bloom in reverse, going back to stage 2 with a full bloom pool of 480, losing 1 per second, until you run run out of bloomness again after 1 day, causing you to regress to stage 1 until again you run out of bloomness 1 day later again, regressing to stage 0, which is not bloomed at all. But surprisingly, or at least I didn't know this, as soon as you start regressing from stage 3 and hit stage 2, you can apply growth formula to restart the blooming process from the stage that you're in. So if you just regressed out of stage 3 into stage 2, you can apply one use of super growth formula, or any growth formula nutrient, to switch your bloom gain rate to the normal formula plus the reduction in wait time from the growth formula nutrient you applied, causing you to start gaining bloomness from 0 but from stage 2 to get back to stage 3 bloom after regressing to stage 2. So basically this means you don't need to become fully unbloomed before you can re-bloom again. Okay, I think that's it. No wait, there's a little bug that can keep you in level 3 bloom for longer, or even indefinitely. If you're in a multiplayer world and it's spring but it's about to turn into summer, disconnect from the world while it's still spring, then join back once summer has started. You'll find that your bloomness gain rate is still set to 0 despite it being summer, since you weren't in the world when the season changed, and therefore the check to change your bloomness drain rate was skipped, so you still have the spring drain rate of 0 even though it's summer. You can repeat this for as long as you want for each subsequent season change to retain spring 0 bloomness drain rate. Alright, that's enough of that. I hope that made all the blooming mechanics clear and easy to understand. Favorite food. Wormwood's favorite food is cooked banana, giving him 27.5 hunger, 0 sanity, and 0 health. Otherwise, if a non-Wormwood would eat it would give them 3 health, because you know, Wormwood doesn't heal. Decent favorite food if you can get a few banana bushes from Monkey Island. Now, we have covered Wormwood's default perks and quirks. Let's now discuss his skill bush, what all the skills do, and Wormwood's recommended skill bush loadout. Hold it right there. I am Banjo the business pig, and I represent the promotional police. And I'm here to tell you that, oh no, my wife just stole all of my money. Darn it. Off she goes. She's been stealing money for the Pig King for a while now. Wormwood, how could have I avoided this conundrum? No, Wormwood, killing people and eating them is wrong. Instead, I could have just got a premium wallet from Exter.com. Exter makes high quality and sustainable wallets, bags, and accessories. And when they contacted me, they said, "Hello, Jakeyosaurus, we will send you 2 wallets as a gift. Exo, please tell us which ones you want." So I said, let me just... Okay, yeah, these 2, please, thank you. But Exter said, "Sorry, we ran out of the gold card holders. You can't have that one, sad face." Oh, okay, can I get 2 of this one, please, instead, thank you. And bam, they sent me 2 Fortuna Parliament wallets in black and brown and an aluminum card holder. Aluminium, and a solar-powered tracker card in case you lose track of your wallet or card holder. At first, I liked the look of the black wallet, but now that they're in person, this brown one is my preferred color. The wallets are made of environmentally certified premium leather, hold up to 12 cards and cash, and blocks wireless skimming theft while coming in 6 different colors. The card holder I was sent comes in even more colors, 12. Though that's not all. Both the wallets and the card holders have a quick card access mechanism by simply pressing a button while still keeping an ultra slim form factor. Anyway, Exter and I have partnered to give you 25% off using my code Jakeyosaurus at checkout or by clicking my link in the description. So thanks to Exter for sponsoring the video. Now that I have my new Exter wallet, all I need now is some money. So I'm going to find and respectfully ask my wife's boyfriend for all my money back. Goodbye, Wormwood. High five. What's this? Vines? What? Long? Wormwood, no, don't, please. That took care of him. Anyway, here is Wormwood's skill bush. We'll start in the middle and cover the left side of the bush first, and then cover the right side of Wormwood's bush. Man, I really ran that joke into the ground. Harder than I did your mom last night. I'm not sorry. Wormwood's first skill is called Seed Sleuth, which enables the ability to identify the initial planting stage of wild seeds and be able to tell what kind of plant it is. Usually, you can't tell what kind of plant a wild seed is until waiting for the growth stage after the seed has been planted. But with this skill, Wormwood can right-click identify the seed once it has been tended to, which will cause the Wormwood to say what plant it is. Although the plant's name doesn't appear in the user interface, so you have to remember what kind of plant it is, though I imagine you will simply just check if the plant is a weed, and if it is, then you dig it up. Otherwise, let it grow! Sorry. Decent skill for saving a little time while farming in the early game with wild seeds and preventing weeds to stress your plants. Also, you have no choice, since this skill must be unlocked to access the rest of the skills on both sides of the skill tree. Next are a bunch of skills that do the same thing, but for different items. All of them are crafting plants, being lunar saplings, costing 5 twigs and 5 health, and normal berries berry bush costing 3 raw, 8 juicy berries and 10 health, 3 leafed berry bush which costs the same as the previous berry bush, juicy berry bush which costs 3 raw, 8 normal berries and 10 health, monkey tails which cost 1 banana, 4 reeds and 15 health, and finally a Lureplant bulb which costs 2 compost wraps, 5 leafy meat and 25 health. Wow, that was a mouthful and there was no commas. All of these plants except the Lureplants count as a transplanted plant, which means once they are planted and you harvest them a few times, they'll require fertilization, whereas naturally spawning plants of the same variety don't require fertilization unless you dig them up and replant them. Except after testing, the lunar sapling never wilts from being harvested too much, it only wilts during summer. Anyway, crafting lunar saplings is kind of whatever. It's simple to gather normal saplings with a shovel, but if you didn't want to destroy any naturally spawning spaplings, this is a fine option. Ah yes, spaplings. All 3 of the berry bush crafts solve the old issue of you could never have the berry bush types which your world or caves didn't generate with. So now using Wormwood, as long as you have one kind of berry bush, you can make the rest of them given some time and resources. Also, this is a renewable way of making more berry bushes, which is pretty neat, because now you can have countless berry bushes in your berry farms without digging up natural ones. Being able to create monkey tails seems kind of weird to me, since they're pretty hard to mass produce naturally by farming the portal on Monkey Island, and now they introduced this crafting recipe which makes it significantly easier and faster to mass produce monkey tails. So a pretty powerful and cheap recipe to plant monkey tails which grow reeds anywhere you want. Acquiring the initial setup cost of reeds can be acquired from just one trip to a natural swamp, getting you usually a stack of reeds. And getting the bananas is a simple visit to the ruins, then search around the wild biomes to find monkeys, where you will find cave banana trees. And then you can easily acquire your initial 10 banana setup cost for 10 monkey tails. Probably the best plant crafting recipe here. Finally, the Lureplant. Normally you cannot acquire your first Lureplant until the first day of spring, where one will be guaranteed to spawn on Pearl's Island out to sea, then a few more will spawn around the world during spring. This recipe allows you to get as many Lureplants as you want before being able to acquire your first natural one, although the recipe is quite expensive, costing 2 compost wraps and 5 leafy meat. The best place to get this leafy meat is probably going to be Lunar Island, killing Carrats or Saladmanders, or finding grass geckos if you have a grass gecko world, or finding the waterlogged biome out to sea and killing the grass gators for 7 leafy meat per kill. These creatures are pretty tough to kill as they run away from you naturally, so bring yourself a weapon like a boomerang or an ice staff to get their attention before kiting them exactly like a beefalo, being like 6, 7 or 8 hits then dodge. But be careful, if there's multiple of them, they are legions, so if you attack one, the rest will come to attack you too. Anyway, this is a great transmute because you can use Lureplants not only for highly productive farms like twigs, grass and reeds, but also by using them as defense for your base or offense against a boss, but not the most effective strategy. Overall, very powerful creation recipes that you'll mostly use in a long-term world like a mega base, but if you're in a short-term world, you probably won't care for these skills. Mushroom Mastery 1 is a skill which speeds up mushroom growing speed that Wormwood plants in a mushroom planter. By default, with no skill, it takes about 2.8125 in-game days, or 22 minutes and 30 seconds, for a mushroom planter to reach its full growth stage, which would give you 4 mushrooms when picked. Also, unlike farm plants, mushroom planters will grow mushrooms whether there's any daylight or not, so they continue to grow during dusk and night. The thing that interrupts their growth is snow. Once snow begins settling on the ground, your mushrooms will rot, unless of course the mushroom planters are in the caves, where they can grow year-round and never rot. Anyway, the Mushroom Mastery 1 skill reduces their growth time to about 2.56 in-game days, or about 20 minutes and 30 seconds, so 10% faster than without the skill. I said it wrong. I'm gonna quickly go over the plantable mushrooms that benefit from this skill in case you don't know what they're good for, so let's go. Blue Mushroom heals non-wormwoods for 20 health, 12.5 hunger, and make you lose 15 sanity. Good for cheap early game healing if you don't mind going a bit cuckoo. Cooking this mushroom makes it restore 10 sanity, no hunger, and -3 health. Green mushrooms reduce your sanity by 50 while restoring 12.5 hunger and 0 health. Very good for going insane for a character who wants early game nightmare fuel like Wanda, while cooking the green cap makes it deal 1 damage to you, but you gain 15 sanity with 0 hunger. So a versatile mushroom for sanity and insanity. Finally, red mushrooms. These are the most useless of the bunch, as they restore 12.5 hunger but take 20 health and do nothing to your sanity. I don't know why you would eat this unless you're an orange man enjoyer, or trying to feed 300 of them to Berger to kill him without attacking. Anyway, you can cook the red cap to make it take 10 sanity and heal you for 1 pitiful health, without restoring any hunger. So yeah, the most useless of the bunch, except for a crafting recipe later. Anyway, moving on. Oh, I got my message from my girlfriend, wow! Mushroom Mastery 2 is a skill similar to the first, in that it simply speeds up the growth time of mushrooms planted in a mushroom planter by Wormwood. This time around, it reduces the growth time to 2.25 in-game days, or about 18 minutes to reach the 3rd growth stage. This is 20% faster than without any mushroom growth speed skills and 11.111% faster than Mushroom Mastery 1. Mushroom Multiplier is the final mushroom growing skill and says that you get a higher mushroom yield from mushroom planters. More specifically, it adds a 4th growth stage to your mushroom. More specifically, it adds a 4th growth stage to your mushroom planter and changes the growth time from 360 seconds or 3/4 of a day per mushroom to 240 seconds or half a day per mushroom. This includes the previous bonuses from the last 2 skills, allowing it to grow up to 6 mushrooms before picking them. You may think that surely adding a 4th growth stage would increase the total growth time of the mushroom planter. Well, it does, but not by much. As with all 3 skills activated, it will take 2.5 in-game days or 20 minutes to reach the final growth stage, where you can pick the mushroom planter for 6 mushrooms. And upon reaching the final growth stage, a mushroom spore of the color of the grown mushroom has a 50% chance to spawn from the mushroom planter. This is important because any player can grow 6 mushrooms from a mushroom planter by planting a mushroom spore into the mushroom planter. Mushroom spores can be acquired from a mush tree in the caves, a mush hat being worn by anything, and as we mentioned, you can also get one from growing 6 mushrooms from a mushroom planter. Using a mushroom spore in a mushroom planter unlocks the 4th growth stage even without the skill, so like I said, a non-Wormwood player can grow 6 mushrooms from it, but it has a growth time of 3.125 days or 25 minutes. But you still get the chance of a mushroom spore spawn once it becomes fully grown. But Wormwood's growth speed skills are also still applied to mushroom spores, so whether you use mushroom spores or mushrooms, Wormwood will grow the same amount of mushrooms faster than any other player and do it in 2.5 in-game days. Except like Wickerbomb, who can make them grow instantly with her books Horticulture Abridged and Horticulture Expanded. With these books, the maximum mushroom yield limit is still restricted by who planted what, so a Wormwood planting a blue cap with tier 3 mushroom skills will cause a yield of 6. A non-Wormwood player planting a mushroom will yield 4, and any character planting a spore will yield 6. And the mushroom planters which yield 6 mushrooms will again have the chance to spawn a spore upon being fully grown, even with Wickerbomb's books. One other quick note about mushroom planters is regarding the efficiency of Wormwood's mushroom skills. You'll notice that it costs 1 mushroom to plant in the mushroom planter, then the 3rd growth stage gives you 4 mushrooms, 3 of which are profit, which took 12 minutes or 1.5 in-game days to grow, which is 1 mushroom profit every 4 minutes, which is the same mushroom profit per minute as picking the mushroom planter after waiting 20 minutes for a mushroom profit of 5, which is, like I said, 1 mushroom profit every 4 minutes, so it's not less efficient to pick the mushroom early on the 3rd stage if you want them. The only way this isn't efficient is once the mushroom planter depletes, you have to feed it another living log to be able to use it again, and it depletes after being harvested 4 times. It depletes after being harvested 4 times, no matter the amount of mushrooms gathered from each harvest. I don't think I would recommend these mushroom skills. By investing 3 points, you can grow 6 mushrooms rather than 4 in 20 minutes rather than 22.5 minutes. All 3 skills, you profit 1 mushroom every 4 minutes, whereas no skills, you profit 1 mushroom every 7.5 minutes. Maybe you want your mushrooms 87.5% faster, but probably not, and you can always build more mushroom planters, so I probably wouldn't recommend these skills, unless you want the next skill. Moonshroom Cloud is an interesting skill, as after being unlocked, Wormwood can now plant moonshrooms into mushroom planters to grow them exactly like any other mushroom with the same yield and growth time. Normally, you cannot plant moonshrooms in mushroom planters at all. What about lunar mushroom spores? Well, lunar spores do exist, but if you try to catch one or when you get too close, they explode, dealing 10 damage and they disappear. So I'm not sure if in the code the functionality to plant them actually exists, but regardless, you can't get one into your inventory to try it, so we'll forget about that. The second part of this skill is where this gets really interesting. The ability is enabled for when Wormwood eats a raw moonshroom, Wormwood will yawn and fart out a spore cloud, similar to the knapsack. This spore cloud will add grogginess to anything inside of it. Grogginess is an invisible meter you have, which once you acquire too much grogginess, you begin walking slower until you then fall asleep. Wormwood is immune to the grogginess from the spore cloud itself, but gains grogginess from eating the moonshroom. Naturally, your grogginess is always slowly going down, hence why you eventually wake up and stop walking slowly. The spore cloud lasts for 20 seconds, and your grogginess, which slows you down, lasts about 5 seconds before you start walking at normal speed again. As a comparison, the knapsack does the same thing, and the spore cloud it spawns also lasts for 20 seconds, except the knapsack can be thrown, so you won't be stuck inside of it. But the knapsack requires you to kill most Toaster with almost 100,000 health, so a decent cheap skill, especially given you can farm your own lunar shrooms for a pamphlet-like effect in the masses and cheaply. Here are 2 examples of where I used moonshrooms and think that they're actually pretty good. I successfully did a bee queen kill, taking minimal damage using a handbat and 100 moonshrooms. Here's the strategy. For phase 1, bee queen will always try to chase you and hit you, so instantly eat a moonshroom upon spawning her to spawn a spore cloud. Then stand on the opposite end of the spore cloud so bee queen drags herself and her grumblebees into it and they all go to sleep. Then get 3 to 4 hits on bee queen and she'll wake up, and when she is woken up like this, she will always fly away. While she's flying away, you stay where the grumblebees are sleeping inside the spore cloud, and then after flying away, she'll scream to wake her grumblebees up. Right before she does this scream, you want to eat another moonshroom to spawn another spore cloud. The exact timing you're going for here is as the grumblebees wake up from the Bee Queen's scream, your Spore Cloud spawns and instantly puts them back to sleep. So to get this timing right, you want to eat the Moonshroom right before Bee Queen begins screaming, so as she's about to stop flying away. Then stand on the opposite side of the Spore Cloud again to drag a Bee Queen into the cloud, wait for her to sleep, attack her 3 to 4 times, and then repeat this until the end of phase 1. Phase 2 is the exact same strategy, except she has more Grumblebees, so if you mess up the timing, you might take hits from the Grumblebees, and or you may need to take a little more time to make sure that all the Grumblebees are in the Spore Cloud when you try to attack Bee Queen. Phase 3 is where it gets a little difficult though, because every so often, Bee Queen will scream continuously, which will constantly wake her Grumblebees up, and have them chase you at high speed. You can't eat enough Moonshrooms fast enough to subdue the Grumblebees from this, so instead you need 2 forms of speed bonus such as a Walking Cane and level 3 Bloom to run the Grumblebees a small distance away so you don't get hit by them. Also in phase 3 and 4, Bee Queen will not try to get in melee distance, she will instead stay just outside of melee distance. So as her screaming ends and the Grumblebees stop chasing you, put yourself safely between Bee Queen and her Grumblebees and eat a Moonshroom. Stay inside the Spore Cloud until all of the Grumblebees have followed you into it and have fallen asleep. Then run opposite from Bee Queen far enough that she drags herself into the Spore Cloud and falls asleep. Then get your 3 to 4 hits in, and you can chase her as she flies away to get 1 to 2 more hits in before dodging her melee attack, and then she'll scream again, causing her Grumblebees to chase you. Repeat this until phase 4. Phase 4 is similar to phase 3, with one difference being it's a little bit quicker, because after getting your 3 to 4 hits on Bee Queen, she'll fly away and immediately begin screaming to charge her Grumblebees. During this small window, you can get 1 to 3 more hits in before the Grumblebees will reach you. Though if you hang around for too long, she will turn around and punch you before returning to screaming. Otherwise, it's the same strategy. Overall, surprisingly effective, but it did take almost 3 whole in-game days, so 24 minutes to start and finish the kill, but this was with a hand bat, which by the end of the kill was only dealing 50 damage. So yeah, a pretty cheap method if you do it perfectly without taking damage, requiring 100 Moonshrooms and a hand bat. The Spore Cloud also works great against the Twins of Terror, as you can put one twin to sleep as soon as they spawn, then leave the other awake twin away from the sleeping twin, so the sleeping twin does not aggro you anymore. This way you can very easily solo one twin while ignoring the other. You can also utilize mushrooms on the awake twin to get free hits and help control and subdue the minions. There is another insane counter Wormwood has against the twins, but we'll cover that later. Also, despite the visual similarity to Toadstool Spore Clouds, your Spore Clouds do not rot food or spoil items like Toadstool Spore Clouds do. I could potentially recommend the skill if you wanted the other mushroom skills, but it's for sure skippable. Pour Sap unlocks a crafting recipe called IP Caca Syrup. Not soup. This name is a pun because caca means poop, and that's relevant because you'll soon see why. When fed to a creature, it causes them to take 20 damage, and then they acquire exploding diarrhea. Okay, not really. It just makes them poop exactly 15 times over 45 seconds, and each time they poop, they take 5 damage and make a poopy sound effect, which, in my opinion, is the best part of the Wormwood skill up trait. Like, there's no doubt. Anyway, when fed to pigs, since it's a non-meat food, they also give an extra poop at the start. And if you feed multiple syrups to one creature, the effect doesn't stack, it only refreshes the effect. I say creature to be broad, but this syrup only works on pigmen, beefalo, and werepigs. Other creatures can eat it, like bunnymen and bearcher, but they don't have the pooping effect, and you can feed it to other players, but they will only restore 9.375 hunger and hurt them for 20 health, and you don't get the pooping effect, unfortunately. Also, while the creatures are having bowel issues, they run around and panic, and panicking creatures do not retaliate if you attack them, at least until they're done pooping, and that won't be for 45 seconds. So you can very easily hold F to kill a werepig, beefalo, or pigman in this time. So if you want to get maximum usage out of a syrup while also killing a beefalo without resistance, wait until the beefalo is about to do their 13th poop, then hold Control F. This should stunlock the beefalo while it also won't retaliate for 9 seconds, and you should get 15 manure and a dead beefalo without resistance. To be extra precise, once the creature does the 15th poop, it continues to panic for 3 seconds more before acting normal again. So waiting for the 13th poop gives you 3 seconds until the 14th, then 3 seconds until the 15th, then 3 seconds until after the 15th, before normal behavior resumes. Feeding werepigs non-meat food items like petals or vegetables is a lot faster at getting bulk manure, but if you don't want to collect hundreds of light bulbs for a 1-to-1 manure conversion, this syrup is kind of cheap to make and funny and very easy to keep the mob running around while you kill them without retaliation. So yeah, use this to mass produce manure to make compost wraps, basically epic. Lunar Cultivator 1 requires you to have spent at least 5 points on left branch skills along with defeating Celestial Champion. That's right, this is a Lunar Alignment skill. Upon unlocking the skill, it allows Wormwood to craft a Carrat using 1 Carrat and 5 health. After crafting the Carrat, it seemingly gets beamed down from the moon itself and will follow you for 3 days or 24 minutes or until it dies, which is very possible because it only has 25 health. You can control up to 4 carrots at one time before not being able to spawn anymore. The carrot does not attack but will fetch anything with an eat option on the floor in a 5-tile radius around Wormwood, so typically any foodstuff that is left on the ground. Carrots do not harvest things like carrots from the ground or berries from berry bushes, but they are useful for gathering food or when hammering giant crops, as hammering giant crops drop seeds and vegetables onto the floor. Also, yes, they collect seeds and including wild seeds dropped by birds, which is helpful for Wormwood in the early game. Whenever the carrot picks up something, it will run back and give it to Wormwood. The carrot only carries 1 stack of an item at a time, so if there's a stack of seeds, it will grab the entire stack. But if there are multiple single seeds in a pile, it will only grab one of them before returning to you and then heading back out to grab the other seeds. So that's one at a time if it wasn't clear. Also, if your inventory is full, the carrot will drop the item it collected on the floor near you and then stop collecting that item until you have space for it again. If Wormwood dies with carrots following, the carrots will disappear in a puff of smoke as if they died too, leaving behind the carrot they cost to make. The same thing happens if Wormwood attacks one of the carrots. Carrots summoned this way will follow you in and out of the caves without having to resummon them. They also don't try to avoid danger even if they get attacked by something like a hound, although enemies like clockworks that are normally aggressive to the player aren't aggressive to carrots. Lunar Cultivator 2 allows Wormwood to craft 1 bulbous light bug using 1 light from light plants in the caves and minus 10 health, apparently in the script, except that's meant to say health. Let me just health. Nice. Upon crafting the light bug, it will circle around Wormwood, giving off light for 2.5 days, which is 20 minutes, or until it dies. You can craft up to 6 of these to circle around you, giving off about as much light as a 100% lantern, except of course it frees up your head and hand slot. They also have 25 health, so can die quite fast, and if Wormwood manages to punch one, they will disappear and return the light bulb used to craft them. Although, this is basically impossible unless they got caught on something, since they always try to stay in a radius around you, but bring extra light bulbs when going into the caves, as 2 falling objects from an earthquake will kill a light bug. These light bugs, like the carrots, do not try to avoid danger even if they are attacked, but they are continuously moving around you, so they don't usually get hit by something like a hound, but it is definitely a possibility. You may think this is a little dangerous to rely on these light bugs for light, but if you summon 6 of them and then notice they start dying off, pick up the light bulbs they drop and begin crafting the light bugs again. Although be extra careful when in the ruins, as a badly timed clockwork could ram through all of your light bugs, leaving you stranded in the dark. This is a good summon, and like the carrots, these light bugs will also follow you in and out of the caves. Lunar Cultivator 3 allows Wormwood to summon a Saladmander from 1 dragon fruit and minus 25 health. This Saladmander will wander around aimlessly near Wormwood as there is nothing but soup flowing through this little man's head. The Saladmander is the combat summon, so deals 40 damage per attack and has 600 health. It attacks once every 2 seconds, so has a DPS of 20, and after the Saladmander has sustained damage and is then out of combat for 2.5 seconds or so, it will begin to regenerate 5 health per 2.5 seconds. It will also attack anything that attacks you, anything that you attack, or anything that you attack or cancel. You are limited to only spawning 2 of these at a time. These Saladmanders are unique to wild Saladmanders, as they are smaller, probably to reflect that they have 2/3 of the health of wild ones, but they deal 40 damage rather than the wild Salamanders dealing 30 damage. But your summoned Salamanders do not have the ability to ripen themselves at a heat source, which normal Salamanders do. Upon ripening, wild Salamanders deal more damage with their normal attack being 50 damage, and have a special fire attack which deals 25 fire damage and sets you on fire. You can tell it's fire damage because Wormwood takes 31.25 damage instead of 25. This means it pierces all and any armor, but does not pierce natural innate damage reduction, like from Woody's Moose being 90% damage reduction, so only takes 2.5 damage, and Wigfrid's natural damage reduction of 25%, so only receives 18.75 damage. Also, if you wear scale mail or you're playing as Willow, you get complete immunity to this fire damage. Okay, enough about Salamander mechanics. This fire damage is why I died at the end of a Wanda speedrun, because the stupid Salamander ripened up my dwarf sound. So the Celestial Champion invoked its wrath, but the Salamander's AoE fired piercing garbage poo-poo attack hit me and killed me and ended my speedrun. Damn, I'm sad. Anyway, if Wormwood lands a hit on his Salamanders, they will also disappear in a puff of smoke and return the dragon fruit used to make them. Except not really, I've been lying this whole time, as when any of your summons die, they return a fresh version of whatever you used to make them, so you get a fresh dragon fruit. The lifespan of this Wormwood crafted Salamander is 16 minutes or 2 in-game days. To get a grasp on how strong these Salamanders are, 2 of them can take on 5 normal hounds at once without dying, nor with any help from Wormwood, but the Salamanders are not legioned, in that if one Salamander gets attacked, it will retaliate, but the other Salamander won't run over to defend the first Salamander, unless you command it to help by attacking the creature. And again, Salamanders will follow you in and out of the caves, just like the rest of the summons. All of these summons are great and have their uses, but my favorite is for sure the Salamander because more damage, despite the damage it did to my Wanda speedrun. But don't worry, we'll test Wormwood's max DPS later on. You'll notice Wormwood cannot choose allegiance to the shadows, since both Wormwood's final tree unlocks are both lunar alignments. This is probably because in the Wormwood was born from a gem from the moon, so Wormwood can only align with the moon, but once Wormwood does have either of these lunar alignments unlocked, he takes 10% less damage from lunar aligned mobs and deals 10% more damage to shadow aligned mobs, and the effect does not stack if you choose both Lunar Cultivator 1 and Lunar Guardian 1. Now let's get back to the base of the bush and work our way up the right side of it, starting with Growth Spurt 1. This skill decreases the time it takes for Wormwood to reach full bloom. Wait, bloom? Full bloom, I mean. This means we'll have to talk about bloom mechanics again, but these skills interact with bloom mechanics very simply. So let's go, boys. Hell yeah. What? Huh? So remember, normally to progress through the bloom stages, you need to accumulate 480 bloomness to reach stage 2 from stage 1, then 480 bloomness to progress to stage 3 from stage 2. Growth Spurt reduces the amount of bloomness you need from 480 to 432, which is 90% of the original 480, so you get there 10% faster. Cool. Growth Spurt 2 is like Growth Spurt 1 in that it reduces the bloomness required to advance to the next bloom stage down to 360, which is 75% of the original 480 bloomness required, so yeah, you reach bloomness in 25% less time with these two skills. This is fine, but if you plan on applying enough growth formula to stay in stage 3 for a long time, then these skills lose value. Probably wouldn't recommend these skills unless you're frequently unblooming and then reblooming again. Next is the skill Flower Power, which says Wormwood will stay in full bloom for longer, but how much longer? And we can already stay in full bloom forever, so what does this skill even do? So remembering that by default, when you enter stage 3 bloom, you are given 1440 bloomness, which is 3 days of bloom. But with the skill active, you are given 2160 bloomness instead, which is 4.5 days of bloom, or 50% more. But not only are you given 50% more initial bloom, but your maximum cap for stage 3 bloomness pool is increased by 50% too, being 3600 bloomness, which is equivalent to 7.5 days of bloom. Yeah, that's kind of it without reiterating what we've already said in the base bloom section. But real quick, if you want to stay in full bloom with this skill, then it's the exact same deal as before. 4 days after you enter bloom, apply 8 uses of super growth formula. Then every 4 days after that, apply 8 uses of super growth formula. Then you'll stay in bloom forever until it becomes winter and your bloomness drains twice as fast. Now, it doesn't take too much of a big thonk to recognize that this skill doesn't really do anything. Regardless if you have this skill or not, it still takes the same amount of super growth formula to stay in full bloom forever. You just get more upfront bloomness when you enter stage 3 bloom, and you have a higher maximum bloomness capacity so you can store more at once. So you can argue that this is one of the worst skills, as mechanically it doesn't really do a lot, unless you're frequently utilizing the free bloom you get from entering stage 3 frequently. But just for fun, let's compare the costs of staying in level 3 bloom all year round versus unblooming and reblooming to maximize the free bloomness you get from this skill. Starting day 1, you find a spoiled fish morsel on the floor, which after applying to Wormwood begins the blooming process. Nearly 700 seconds later on day 2.46, you have entered full bloom and you will exit full bloom just before day 7, unless you apply growth formula nutrients. So let's do that. After going onto the ocean, harvesting some kelp, finding a bottle or two, and burning some grass for some ashes, you can craft yourself a growth formula starter at an alchemy engine. Don't apply this formula yet, as it can be made significantly better by rotting it in super growth formula. You can do this by dumping it in the ocean for 1.3 days to let it rot faster than just leaving it on the ground, which will take 2 days. Or you can find Toadstool in the caves and have one of his spore clouds rot as many growth formula starters as you want in mere seconds. One super growth formula has 5 uses, which is 1200 bloomness, which is equivalent to 2.5 days of bloomness if applied during your stage 3 of bloom. So if it's day 5, which means you have 2 days left on your full bloom, apply your full bottle of super growth formula and begin the process again. In the early game, it probably isn't worth refilling and re-fermenting one bottle at a time, so perhaps wait until you have at least 4 bottles so you can stockpile up to like 10 days of bloomness at once. Anyway, the grand total amount of growth formula used in this scenario 1 is 1 spoiled fish morsel and 94 uses of super growth formula, which is 23 3/5 bottles of super growth formula, which, you know, it's kind of a lot, but not that bad, because rounding up, it's 24 bottles, which is only 24 kelp and 24 ash, and then some bottles, like 4 to 12 bottles. And as you find more and more bottles, you can stockpile more super growth formula, and to make it even easier, you can visit Lunar Island to grab some kelp on the beach, plant it in the water near your base. So the cheaper way to stay mostly in full bloom is to simply use any growth formula like Glommer Goop or super growth formula once to begin the blooming process. Then when your free bloomers pool runs out in stage 3 after 4.5 days and you regress stage 2 bloom, simply apply growth formula again to begin reblooming back to stage 3. If you use super growth formula, this gets you a level 3 bloom uptime of 88% during autumn and summer, 73% during winter, and of course 100% during spring, while over a whole year it would only cost you 11 uses of super growth formula, which is 2 bottles and 1/5 of a third bottle. So yeah, the expensive method is 100% bloom uptime once you get your first full bloom, but costs 94 uses of super growth formula, or just under 24 bottles of super growth formula per year. Whereas taking advantage of the free bloomness you get from entering stage 3 bloom, your average uptime over the whole year would be 88.3%, but but only costs 11 uses of super growth formula, or 2 bottles and 1/5 of the 3rd bottle per year. So yeah, that's a pretty good comparison between the two strategies. Anyway, no more bloom talk. Oh wait, Shade Plant is a skill which grants Wormwood increased protection from overheating while in full bloom. Specifically, it provides 180 summer insulation against the sun, which is the same as the character with no temperature skills wearing an umbrella and a straw hat. This will cause you to take 5 minutes and 15 seconds to go from 25 degrees to 70 degrees due to ambient temperature. Without any insulation, it would take 45 seconds. So you last 7 times longer until you take damage from overheating with the skill versus no insulation. An umbrella has 240 insulation, so this skill is a little worse than just using an umbrella without the skill, but you can of course use the skill along with the umbrella for a massive 420 insulation, which will have you take 11 minutes and 15 seconds to go from 25 degrees to 70 degrees due to ambient temperature. Though these numbers are based on summer daytime, as once night begins, every player gains more natural nighttime insulation to the sun, so you'd actually last a little longer. But yeah, anyway, by default, Wormwood gains 60 overheat protection while bloomed, which we said before, but in the code, the skill doesn't add to this default protection. Instead, it overwrites it with the value of 180, so it is 180 insulation from the sun. Ignore the wiki saying that the skill provides 360 summer insulation. That is incorrect. I'd recommend this skill if you already unlocked the bloom skills to reach this skill and aren't using a thermal stone to stay cool in summer. Otherwise, I wouldn't spend the points to unlock it. Photosynthesis is a skill which says it slowly regenerates Wormwood's health when exposed to daylight while in full bloom. Slowly is right, because more specifically, you regenerate 1 health every 20 seconds, which is very slow. And this regeneration only happens during daytime hours, so it doesn't work during dusk and night, but it does work if you're within the light radius of a dwarf star spawned from a Starcrawler's staff, or exposed to either of Wickedbottom's Lux Eterna books, regardless of what time of day it is. It also works during the rain/snow as long as it's daytime. Pretty okay given that Wormwood cannot heal with food like other characters. In the average autumn day where 4 minutes of the 8-minute day is daylight, you will regenerate 12 health that day. So for reference, 12.4 autumn days will give you enough daylight to fully heal back to 150 health from 1 health. I would recommend this skill only if you want the arguably useless bloom skills, making this skill effectively cost 4 insight points. Otherwise, probably skip this skill. Farmhand tends to plant in a larger range while bloomed. Wormwood does this by default when fully bloomed, like we said, but this skill increases the range from 1 tile to 1.5 tile radius. Farmhand also lets you harvest crops faster, going from a 56 frame animation to a sped up 28 frame animation, so about 1 second reduced to half a second. Although due to lag and input delay, the actual amount of time spent picking farm plants is not 50% less, but rather like 30 to 40% less depending on your lag, since actions take time to be registered between animations. Compost Care. This skill simply reduces the 3-second animation for Wormwood to apply Compost Wrap to himself down to a 1.5-second animation. Slightly useful for applying during combat, but for comparison, eating a meat dish in combat only has a 1-second animation before being able to move again, so it's still slower healing than something like Progies for other characters, but will make a good difference during combat. So it's an okay skill. I would recommend it, but mostly because the last skill on this branch is amazing. But before that skill, Be Kind. This skill says that bees and butterflies will be passive to Wormwood, so they won't attack unless revoked. The only scenarios where a bee or killer bee would attack Wormwood with the skill active is if Wormwood attacks the bee's hive, or if a bee or killer bee is already out in the open and you actually attack it. During testing, we found something that was pretty inconsistent and wonky, but I think we figured out what's happening. When Wormwood with the skill active is within a 3-tile radius of a killer beehive, it pacifies that killer beehive for Wormwood, but oddly also for every other player too. And this seems to be for a short period of time, so even if Wormwood exits this 3-tile radius, the killer beehive will remain pacified for all players for a time. Once this time expires and Wormwood is outside of the 3-tile radius, the killer beehive reverts back to being aggressive to everybody, in that if another player gets within a 2.5-tile radius of the killer beehive, killer bees will come out and attack them. This is such a weird behavior caused by the skill. It makes me think that it's programmed such that, like I said, when Wormwood is nearby, it nullifies or pacifies the killer beehive for some time, and when that wears off, the hive is aggressive again. Whereas the skill's description would have you believe that the skill would only benefit Wormwood himself and not other players, but due to the way it was implemented, it indirectly benefits other players. There's kind of a lot to take in, but this skill is whatever for this bee pacification effect, so The second effect is butterflies will not fly away from you. Normally butterflies fly directly away from anything that counts as a danger, even other NPCs, which can be used to make butterfly farms and therefore butter farms by trapping something like a bunnyman close to a magma pool in the dragonfly desert, then plant a flower directly between the bunnyman and the magma pool. This causes the butterfly to try to fly directly away from the bunnyman, causing them to die to fire damage due to the proximity to the magma pool, but without catching fire. Only problem with this is the area has to be loaded and a player has to be close by, as butterflies only spawn at a certain rate depending on the amount of players nearby. One butterfly spawns every 10 to 20 seconds per player within a distance of 6 to 25 wool units, and each player is capped at having 4 butterflies active at a time. So yeah, that's right, if you're closer than 6 wool units to a flower, you won't cause a butterfly to spawn from that flower, and in this method there's only one flower, so your butterflies will never spawn if you're too close. So make sure to stand 1.5 to 6.25 tiles away from the flower. Any further than 6.25 0.25 tiles also means a butterfly can't spawn from that flower. You can do this farm without a bunny man, but it requires perfect flower placement like you can see here, as the butterflies always do an idle animation above the flower upon spawning, which is enough time for them to die to fire proximity damage. If you place the flower too close to the magma pool though, the flower will just catch fire. Otherwise, there isn't any hidden mechanics with this part of the skill, like the killer beehive part. The butterflies will just not fly away from you even if you kill a butterfly. Though even if you're nearby, they will still fly away from other players. Bramble Trap Specialists used to allow Bramble Traps to not hurt your fellow teammates, but then they changed it so Bramble Traps by default don't hurt your teammates anymore. Neat. Anyway, so now the skill does the following. While Wormwood is bloomed and nearby, the traps reset automatically. I thought this would be kind of bad, but the trap resets very fast after activating and then activate again very rapidly. This is particularly useful for hound attacks if you didn't have enough traps to kill the whole wave at once. Also, the range at which a bloomed Wormwood can reset the traps is 1.5 tile radius around the bloomed Wormwood. Now, let's be a little more precise. There's for sure a cooldown before the trap will be automatically reset by this skill, but it's applied kinda oddly, not really. As you can see, after placing the trap, it triggered, reset almost instantly, then triggered again, all in 2 seconds and 15 frames. But after this, it took 2 seconds and 50 frames for it to reset and trigger again, then it took 3 seconds and 2 frames, and so on. It seems that it has a cooldown of about 3 seconds, in that it will trigger every 3 seconds-ish on average, except the first trigger, because it hasn't triggered yet, so it isn't on reset cooldown. Yeah, anyway, the trap has 10 uses, so deals 400 area effect damage in total until it breaks. So I timed how long it took to kill a spider warrior to get the average DPS. It took 25 seconds and 48 frames from the start of the first trigger animation until it killed the spider warrior. Bear in mind that the last trigger didn't have to reset since it broke, so this might be a little faster DPS than if it only had to trigger 5 times with a 5th reset. Anyway, the DPS was 400 divided by 25.8 seconds, which is 15.5 area of effect DPS per trap. I'm interested to hear and read your comments about what crazy things you people are doing with this skill, or any ideas on how to use them to its maximum potential, particularly against bosses. Bramble Husk Specialist. This skill enables your Bramble Husk to fire off a round of thorns without ever getting hit. On every third attack you land without being attacked, a round of thorns will be unleashed, the same as if you got hit while wearing the Bramble Husk. This streak resets if you're attacked, but that doesn't really matter because being attacked causes the thorns to fire out anyway. This streak is also stored such that if you stack 2 stacks on an enemy, you can then unleash the thorns with your first attack on your next enemy. Interesting, but stacks reset on disconnect, switching to overrollable caves, or unequipping the Bramble Husk itself. And it doesn't take long to build these stacks, so everything I just said doesn't really matter. Anyway, this has some unique effects since the Bramble Husks will now, at minimum, fire off 22.667 damage in an area effect around Wormwood at least once every 1.5 seconds, as long as you keep attacking. This is particularly nuts against Fullweaver's Woven Shadows, which would otherwise heal him for 400 health for every one that Fullweaver consumes. So as long as you stay really close to Fullweaver and keep pounding him with your weapon, the area effect of the Bramble Husk will take care of the Woven Shadows. This way you don't need to weather pains, which is an easy but kind of expensive way to take out the Woven Shadow healers. Overall, one of Wormwood's best abilities if you do a lot of combat, as it gives you a free 15.111 AoE DPS. This skill is the reason you unlock the rest of the branch as a prerequisite, because it's just that good. We'll talk about Wormwood's total DPS potential with this skill and his other skills a little later on. You're nearly there. On to the last section of the skill, Bush, and it is Wormwood's other affinity skill, starting with Lunar Guardian I. This skill enables the ability to trap enemies in vines and deal 10 physical damage back to them if they hit Wormwood while Wormwood is wearing specifically Brightshade Armor. The vine's trapping effect lasts for 6 seconds and 10 frames, counting from the frame you receive the damage until the frame that the vine begins retracting back into the ground and the enemy begins moving again. If the enemy hits you again during the duration of the vine is not refreshed, nor is the thorn damage applied, so you can only re-trap and re-damage the enemy once the initial vine actually expires. Oddly enough, but also pretty neatly, is that this effect works at full capacity on bosses. But not only that, but it works against flying enemies, which is really odd since the vine is on the ground. Adding these two things together, it works on flying bosses like, the Twins of Terror. So whenever you mess up and get hit by one of the twins, specifically during phase 2 where they dash around very fast, instead of being pulverized, the first hit they land will cause them to be instantly ensnared, leaving you safe. And during testing this scenario, you can see that if an enemy hits you and that hit causes the Brightshade Armor to break, the ensnaring vines do not get triggered, so that's noteworthy. If your armor is about to break, you may be about to be dealt some heartache. Wow, amazing. But wait, we're not done. It also works on nightmare creatures. Even though they teleport, the vine just teleports with them and keeps them trapped. So this skill has great defensive utility and control, as it allows you to recover from a mistake when you get hit by anything. But like we said, it only works when wearing Brightshade Armor. But how do I get Brightshade Armor? Well, this is how you get said armor. Kill Celestial Champion. Give the shard to Celestial Champion. Drops to Wagstaff. Wait 5 days for the Lunar Rift to spawn. 4 to 5 days after that, it will grow. Then about 1 to 2.167 days after that, it will spawn its first round of Pure Brilliance. So you must wait a total of 11.25 days-ish before you can mine Pure Brilliance after giving the shard to Wagstaff. Then you must actually find the Lunar Rift that spawns, or wait 13 to 15 total days after giving the shard to Wagstaff, at which point the Lunar Rift will grow big enough that you can see it on your map without discovering it yourself. Mine the Pure Brilliance that spawns until you have 5 of it. The crystals have a 75% chance to drop 2 Pure Brilliance and a 25% chance to drop 1 Pure Brilliance, and there should be at least 4 crystals. Watch out for the grazers which have a grogginess aura around them, which will put you to sleep, and then they'll bite you for 50 physical and 10 planar damage, but they are lunar aligned, so you may only take 54 damage total if you have a lunar aligned skill activated. Once you're within the portal's range, the grazers will walk around and slowly follow you. You can use a telelocator staff to get rid of them by teleporting them somewhere randomly on the map, as killing them is futile because they spawn back from their corpse in less than a minute. Then you must find or bait deadly Brightshades into spawning from the portal, which will happen a few days after the rift appears on the map. Also, Latnish Monster explains how to farm these evil plants in his video linked in the description, but basically the easiest way to bait deadly Brightshades into dying is by planting a bunch of dragon fruit seeds near a dragonfly magma pool, as the deadly Brightshades will always prioritize infesting the transplanted plants of any kind over wild naturally spawning plants. But it's a little more complicated than that, so check out Latnish Monster's video that explains it. But for now, just know that your first wave of Brightshades will spawn once the portal is about 9.5 days old. You can also manually kill the deadly Brightshades, but they're a little painful to kill as you must take out their vine before attacking them themselves, and you have to do that repeatedly until they perish. Then pick up the husks. You need 4 of these, and the Brightshades drop 2 husks each. Then you must craft the Bright Smithy at any lunar altar or the celestial orb using 5 moon rock, 5 moon shards, and 1 pure brilliance. Place the Bright Smithy at your base and use it to finally craft your Brightshade Armor. Whew. That costs 4 Brightshade Husks and 4 Pure Brilliance. While we're on the subject, we'll go over what the Brightshade Armor actually does itself, other than enabling Wormwood's Ensnare skill. So the armor itself provides 80% physical damage reduction, along with an extra multiplicative 10% physical damage reduction if the thing attacking you is lunar aligned. It also provides a flat 10 planar damage reduction, along with 10% planar damage reduction. All this protection will last for 830 of the armor's health, aka durability. The armor will also deal damage back to the enemies by default. Specifically, it deals a flat 10 planar damage back to the enemy that hits you, and it will deal 10 extra planar damage to the enemy if the enemy is shadow aligned. Once the armor hits 0 durability, it does not break. Instead, it is unequipped and becomes unequipable until you repair it. And it can only be repaired with a Brightshade repair kit costing 1 Brightshade Husk and 1 Pure Brilliance to craft at the Bright Smithy. This repair kit has 1 use, but it fully restores the Brightshade armor to 100% durability. Epic. So with this skill, you'll be dealing 20 damage, which is 10 physical and 10 planar, back at enemies that hit you and are not already ensnared, or 30 damage, 10 physical and 20 planar if they are shadow aligned and not already ensnared. But it also means you can't use your Bramble Husk without switching between the 2 armor pieces. Also, all of this damage from the armor and the skill are not affected by your damage modifiers. It's worth comparing the Brightshade Armor and the Bramble Husk since they are both very well tied into Wormwood's kit. The Bramble Husk will always deal 22.667 damage back in an area of effect around the equipping player when they are hit, and on every 3rd hit of a hit streak with the specialist skills activated. Whereas the Brightshade Armor is single target and only deals 10 to 20 damage back, but with the skill though it becomes 20 to 30 damage. So better against shadow creatures for damage, but worse against every other enemy, but you do get the utility of keeping them rooted in place for 6 seconds when they do hit you. But it's very important to remember that if an enemy hits you while they are already ensnared, they do not receive physical damage again from the skill. They will only receive planar damage from the default ability of the Brightshade Armor until the vine expires, and then they can be rechapped and redamaged by the skill. If you unequip the Brightshade Armor, it does not make the vines disappear, so you can wear it, get hit to trap the enemy, then use the Bramble Husk until the vine expires. Decent skill, kind of, but it's just mostly you unlock it because, you know, the next skill is pretty good. Lunar Guardian II unlocks a very powerful ability which activates while fighting with Brightshade melee weapons, and right now the only Brightshade melee weapon that activates this effect is the Brightshade Sword, which is acquired the same way as the Brightshade Armor, except the sword costs 4 Pure Brilliance, but 3 Brightshade Husks. It deals 38 physical damage and 30 planar damage per attack, and using 1 Brightshade repair kit will fully repair the sword. Anyway, the effect this skill enables is every time you land a hit with the sword, this ability has a 20% chance to spawn a vine from the ground, which will whip your target once it's within range. The vine whip deals 70 physical damage and 15 planar damage for a total of 85 damage, before burrowing back into the ground and despawning shortly after. The planar damage aspect of the ability is is potentially more useful for the future when we have more planar entity enemies, but basically, the 15 planar damage from the vine will pierce the resistance of planar entities like deadly Brightshades. We will not be going over planar damage and defense mechanics in this video. If you want to learn about that, go watch the Wolfgang guide video if you want the full depth explanation of planar damage mechanics. Also, when you attack an enemy and that attack causes a vine to spawn, that vine will only hit the enemy that was targeted with the attack that caused the vine to spawn. So if that enemy dies and another is attacking you, the vine will not retarget and attack the other enemy, even if it hasn't even attacked yet. Assuming the vines don't miss and always land a hit, this effectively adds 34 average single target DPS to Wormwood's personal damage. Funnily enough, the vines can be targeted and killed by enemies, which can lead to enemies de-aggroing from you after getting hit by a vine. DPS time! Assuming 2 attacks per second, Wilson with no buffs deals 136 DPS with a Brightshade sword, whereas Wormwood with his Bramble Husk specialist skill, a Brightshade sword, and Lunar Guardian II will deal a DPS of 185.11, 15.111 damage of which is area of effect. That's 136% of Wilson's damage, so Wormwood with his full kit can out DPS a Wilson with a Brightshade sword, or a Wigfrid with a dark sword and no buffs, as she, as of the recording of this video, only deals 125% of Wilson's damage, unless Wigfrid's future skill tree has some kind of damage buffing skill. Also, just for fun, throw in 2 Saladmanders summoned with Wormwood's skill into the mix, which you can indeed unlock at the same time as Lunar Guardian II. Boosts Wormwood's DPS to 225.11. Wow. 165% of Wilson's damage and 132% of Wigfrid's damage. Epic. Now that we're done with Wormwood's damage potential, let's now talk about Wormwood's recommended skill tree. So starting off, I want to unlock maximum damage potential, which means unlocking the Saladmander summons, Lunar Guardian II, and Bramble Husk Specialist. To do that, first we'll go up the Bramble Husk Specialist branch, ignoring Be Kind, to unlock Bramble Husk Specialist and all of the prerequisites. This gives you super accessible AoE damage with the Bramble Husk while you're attacking. In the early game, you won't have access to Brightshade equipment, so let's work towards unlocking the Salamanders now by unlocking everything in the middle left branch, including Pore Sap and Moonshroom Cloud. Doing this unlocks the top left branch as we have spent 5 points on left branch skills, so now we can unlock the Carrat summon to then unlock the Salamander summon. Lastly, let's spend a point on Growth Spurt I to then unlock Lunar Guardian I to unlock Lunar Guardian II, and that's the skill tree that I would recommend. Unfortunately, you don't have enough points to unlock Lunar Guardian II and all of the summons, so you have to pick between the Salamander or the Lightbug. You can also opt to unlock Be Kind rather than Growth Spurt, that way you can use Killer Bees, which are normally aggressive, to fight bosses, and you can also use normal bees during spring when they're normally aggressive to everything, including bosses. Otherwise, this tree is pretty recommended unless you're in a long-term world where you definitely want the plant crafting recipes, or if you're not doing a lot of combat and you want to get 50% more free bloom time for free each time you enter full bloom, then consider unlocking the bottom right branch skills. And that's Wormwood's skill tree. I'm sure there's a lot of fun and productive farms and scenarios you can make with Wormwood's new skill tree, so be sure to tell me what you found to work for you. I personally want to see a ton of Bramble Traps killing a boss in seconds, but maybe we'll do that in the Wormwood boss run. Speaking of boss run, the next video will be the Wolfgang speedrun with his new skill tree, and I will not be holding back. I will be going faster than I've gone before, but you'll have to wait to see that video, as it isn't done yet. If you want to see it sooner than everyone else, you can get yourself a level 2 channel membership for early access to videos before public release, along with giving you access to once per week play sessions with me on Twitch, which you can watch the streams of on the YouTube playlist on my channel page. Thank you, channel members. And yeah, those live streams are unlisted, by the way, so you have to actually access them through the playlist, yes. Anyway, yes, that is all. Subscribe, like, comment saying wow, epic video or something. Yes, thanks for buying my desk mat merch, which I announced last video. The pre-orders have now ended. You can no longer buy it ever again. Thank you for those who bought it. I appreciate the support. Anyway, I'm leaving now. Goodbye. See you next time. Be sure to subscribe. Oh, it was gross in there, but never do that again. Anyway.